Hi, I'm Alex Vadia. I'm the CEO founder of StoryStream and delighted to be here today to speak on the Retail Innovation website. All about how we help brands and retailers to win the battle for shopper spend in the age of the attention economy. So what does that mean? So one of the biggest trends, I guess, to have shaped the last 10, 20 years is how the shift to social, mobile, digital channels has made the whole challenge of capturing attention harder than ever. Attention is the currency that all of us as brands and marketeers are looking to capture. The typical attention span of your average consumer is a bit less than 8 seconds now. So you've got such a small window of time to capture someone's attention and make them to lean in and pay interest to you. No surprises that social media has really cracked that attention code, and in the process kind of rewired our brains around how we think and engage with each other, with content, with devices, and really shaped how we engage in society. Specifically, it's changed the way that we engage with digital content. So we've moved from fixed, static communication to something that's much more endless. It's AI driven. It's increasingly authentic, things like UGC and short form video based as well. So the whole experience has kind of been changed. And that's also then had a direct impact on how we now shop online. So kind of like social has created this kind of once in a generation shift in how we shop online now. The kind of whole TikTok made me buy it movement, where you're sitting there scrolling, watching Netflix, and all of a second you've bought a t-shirt for the holiday you hadn't even thought about. We did some research at StoryStream recently to kind of start trying to unpick and understand more about what was going on around the whole role of social commerce and the interplay between how consumers are discovering brands, buying products, and coming to e-commerce sites to really understand what that journey looks like. One of the first kind of things that I guess kind of everyone expected but was confirmed is that the growing role of social around where discovery for new brands and new products starts. So people are now using a TikTok search bar versus the Google search bar to look for new things and ideas and inspiration, creating a much more social, kind of community authentic way of discovering brands and products. What was interesting though is that there's still a huge proportion of online shoppers that like the discovery of social but still want to actually go on and buy and transact on a brand website or e-commerce store. So it feels like, and we looked into this data a little bit more, and concerns around delivery, where my data sits if I sign up to something, kind of like building the trust in the brand is a little bit more difficult when you're buying directly on social. So the role of brand websites and e-commerce stores is critical and will remain so. As brands, you've got brands and marketers have got an increasing challenge where audiences have moved to social. That's where all the attention is. And then it's no surprise that to acquire traffic from that channel, the spend in social acquisition is the fastest growing really in across all channels. So last year in 2024, it grew by over 22%. The closest second growth was in paid search at only 4%. So there's been a huge shift in the amount of spend and investment going into acquiring social traffic. But there's a big problem. 80% of people who've come from social have abandoned their purchase once being redirected from clicking an ad or a link from a social channel, and it's actually even slightly higher for Gen Z. And that presents a really big problem because you're essentially saying there is more and more traffic that I'm paying for to acquire from social media channels, but the performance of that traffic is not performing how I need it to. And the reality is, when you look at the data, so this is some research that Content Square did as part of their annual survey last year. Social traffic performs badly. It bounces at higher rates, it doesn't convert as high, and it doesn't lead to as much engagement. So there's a real problem where you are paying more to get traffic from social. Consumers are increasingly more influenced by what's happening on social, but when they come to your site, they're not performing like they should. And at the heart of it, this is starting to have a real impact on the profitability of e-commerce. So customer acquisition costs are up by nearly 20% in just the last 2 years alone. So under increasing pressure and margins, anything that can be done to help reduce that acquisition cost and increase the performance of any source of traffic is critical. So what's going on? And this is something at StoryStream we really wanted to get kind of to the bottom of. And it appears that there's a broken journey from what is happening on social through to people coming to a brand's website and e-commerce store to then go on and buy. And when you look at this, if you think about what's going on between those two channels, so on social media, we use this kind of like term, customers are hooked on social. It's inspiring, it's discovery based, it's based on real life content and experiences, and it's full of real people. So that kind of warm, fuzzy, engaging, dopamine inducing experience is where we spend all our time. But then when you get to the e-commerce site, you're hit by what is largely a transactional, relatively uninspiring experience that's quite static. Um, and there's a big shift essentially in that customer journey, almost an experience gap between what happens on social and what happens on an e-commerce store. And if you think about an e-commerce store and where it's come from, it's been very well optimized over many years for Google search, for transactional experiences once people are quite far down the funnel. But what about all that traffic that might not be ready to buy, but is ready to be inspired and discover more? And what you see when in some of the surveys we did is that there is a whole missing experience layer typically on e-commerce websites. What people really want alongside the ability to buy is inspiration, discovery, be able to see what products look like on real people through things like UGC, more video content to make it more engaging and experiential, and obviously more personalization to make the experience for them. So the answer to all of this seems to be that in the same way for years we've been optimizing for search traffic coming from Google with search engine optimization, blog posts, loads of work that's done around that. It seems obvious that you now need to think about optimizing for traffic coming from social media channels. And how can you do that? Well, bring the content and the experiences that people love from social but through to your website, so customers can continue discovering and being inspired and ultimately go on to buy. So what do you need to do that? Well, firstly, you need the right content. It's not just about product imagery and static pictures. You need live, vibrant content from the community, a mixture of brand, customer, influencer, increasing employee, to give a much more wide, varied and diverse experience around the brand and the products that you're selling. Secondly, you need the right experiences. It's not just about having product galleries and clickable galleries and product information. You need video content, you need stories, you need shoppable posts that are frictionless in the way that you buy. And then ultimately you need that personalization and scalability to make the experience much more shaped around you. And that essentially is what StoryStream is all about. So StoryStream, we have the claim, it's all about winning attention and inspiring sales. And what we do at StoryStream is we bring the power of social shopping to the brand and e-commerce website. So we're bringing the experiences, the content and the personalization that you get on social, but directly onto the e-commerce store to start providing a richer, more immersive, more engaging experience that's key to engaging modern consumers, particularly those coming from social. And that's about bringing the authentic social content to life that's around brands and products, delivering it in things like short form video, shoppable galleries, made instantly shoppable, but all driven through AI, so you get a much richer, personalized for you type experience. And essentially what we're doing is we're closing that experience gap from social to website by bringing the experience and the content directly to where customers land, to give them that more warm, engaging way of bridging that journey and then spending more time on the site, ultimately going through to purchase. And what we're able to do by taking this approach to optimizing website experiences for social is transforming shopper engagement conversion. So we are able to increase dwell times on site and engagement by more than 30%, conversion rates by 18%, and reducing bounce rates. So essentially what we're doing is giving the ability to create a more engaging, sticky experience that allows customers to spend more time, be inspired and discover more, ultimately leading to more purchase. And we're doing that for hundreds of brands around the world, helping them drive millions in additional revenue for brands from the likes of John Lewis, Lululemon, Sainsbury's Group, through to beauty sector like L'Oreal, Kiehl's and Ipsy, and also in the automotive space as well for brands like VW and Porsche. So what can that look like? Well, here's an example for Sweaty Betty, who are a long-time customer of StoryStream, and they're a brand full of amazing experiences and inspirational stories, but they wanted a way to bring that to life on their own e-commerce website in a way that really helped engage their audience and also convince new customers about why that brand is so important and valuable. So what they did is they bring influencer, UGC and employee content and deliver that through StoryStream experiences, creating this immersive layer on top of their existing e-commerce platform, but integrated in a very frictionless, seamless way. So many pages you see will have our content delivered on them, embedded in a very seamless, low effort way. And that's had a really significant impact on things like bounce rate, reducing that, increasing average order value by over 20%, and increasing dwell time as well. So it's become a key part of the whole website experience. So how does StoryStream work? So very simply, we do 4 core things. Firstly, we help you build a rich content library of all of the best social content that's out there. And we, through our workflow, are able to identify posts from social media channels, get content directly, reuse content that the brand has already created or influencers creating, and also tap into employees. And we can bring all of that together into one place. And then we have our own patented AI called Aura, which essentially manages all of that process for you. It helps you to grade and tag and enrich the content. It helps it to make it shoppable automatically. And what we can do is build a very rich, limitless library of content that's constantly evolving around the latest trends, themes, and campaigns that you're running as a brand. Then through the platform, we then power our experiences, which are embeddable experiences that sit across your website and beyond. And that can be as simple as a product a carousel, through to enrich immersive hubs, through to PDP galleries as well. And we're able to then deliver that content in real time to provide a more up-to-date, trend-driven experience that's bringing all this incredible content to life. And then bringing all that together, we have our own analytics and insights suite, which uses data from GA4 or Adobe or existing tools. And we're then able to take that and then use AI to help give you a lot of useful information in terms of what the impact of StoryStream has been on your website, how much conversion revenue have we made, how we've reduced and increased engagement rates and reduced bounce rates and things. And we also have a lot of insights layer, so we're now using AI to help you understand why content is performing. Like, does pictures of people outdoors perform better than pictures of people indoors, for instance? And in terms of our business, so we have 3 key areas of why StoryStream is a really powerful tool and platform, but also business to work with. So firstly, a lot of what I talked about today is not possible without scalability. You can't just be increasing team sizes and resources are already very tight. So with our patented AI, we help to scale a lot of the whole workflow through StoryStream, from finding and managing content right through to publishing and getting the data around it. So you can be scaling your content operation at a much higher level using StoryStream, but without needing lots of people. Secondly, we have a lot of success with leading global brands, some of that I've mentioned. So our technology is very much built for enterprise organizations operating at global scale, multi-currency. We have a lot of sophistication around managing things like out of stock and making sure the content reflects that and things like that, multi-language as well. And then lastly is like the actual technology is very fast and easy to integrate. So we sit as a layer within your existing technology stack, which can be very quickly integrated and embedded within all that you do. We're actually a Mac certified business, and we've got lots of great customer references and reviews saying why we're the leading technology in the space. So I will leave it there. I hope that has been an interesting few minutes to kind of understand a bit more about this opportunity and challenge around bridging the gap between social and your website. And I'd be delighted to meet you. So do reach out at storystream.ai or find us on LinkedIn and talk more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. I've got a few questions, if you don't mind asking them. First question is, I've seen user-generated content systems for about 15 years, the likes of Curulate, now Bazaar Voice and Yotpo, but this seems a little bit different. But where is it different to the traditional UGC platforms that are out in the market today?
Yeah, it's a great question, Craig. I think what the UGC platforms are kind of like Generation 1 UGC platforms is probably a good way to describe it. As social grew and Instagram became more popular, brands wanted a way to start showcasing some of their community on their website. And what those tools did a job of was helping brands to kind of find that and generally put a module on a homepage or a couple of parts of their site to deliver that. Now you kind of fast forward to today, what we see ourselves is like the next generation of what the technology was starting to do, which was to provide a much more immersive, community-driven way of discovering and shopping on a website. So so we see UGC as one stream of content that powers the new sort of story first way of shopping or immersive commerce. But you've also got your reusing your own brand social content or working with influencer content, and employee content is another big way. So actually it's about layering up on top of all of these things. And then the use of AI that we have to basically automate that is a massive piece. So a lot of those existing tools you mentioned are quite manual still and require quite a lot of resource. So, and that's basically creates a hurdle in how much you can scale, because the real value in the type of solution like StoryStream is doing it at scale. So all parts of the customer journey have an element of this social first experience built into it. And so using AI, which we've patented and have built out over the years, we've got a good way of scaling that. With the likes of brands like John Lewis, you think how many product pages they have. At that sort of scale, it's required. And then the generative AI element to what we do is different. So a lot of the experiences and what we have coming is all generative AI driven. So you can start to get to real levels of personalization and relevancy and intent based experiences that shape around the customer. Using all different types of content as well. So I think the main two differences are volume and value of the content we can provide while being automated, and then the types of experiences which have a more higher impact in terms of the customer journey and overall revenue generated.
Great, that's helpful. And another question around getting the content. So you talked about identifying content that's out there and then bringing it on. This is more of a practical question. Is like how are you identifying the content out there in the ether, and how are you bringing it onto site? The practical ways of getting that video and imagery onto the site?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, the answer is there's lots of different ways. The one route is to go directly to customers. So we have a solution called Content Briefs, where brands can actually brief the type of content that they want, and actually we get very high rates of upload and return through that, because consumers like being wanted and being part of the brand, particularly if it's one that they love. So there's one customer we launched with a few weeks ago, and they got over 1,000 submissions within the first week of people sharing content about their experience with the product. So that's that area. We can also tap into the social channels where we're able to help identify UGC through things like hashtags, mentions, and things. But our AI will also then do a lot of the analysis to kind of make sure it's brand appropriate and manage the usage rights. Well, we have a workflow to get the usage rights directly. So we can operate at a scale to make that whole process work very effectively. And some of our customers are using that content to use back onto social in their paid media and things like that as well. So big part of our value proposition is around helping brands to engage on social channels and then bring them back to their site through paid media and things. It's really, and then other ways we can get content directly from brand platforms like asset managers or other tools and things they have. We have some situations where brands are retailers working with other brands, and we help them to channel content in as well. So it's a very kind of seamless stream-based workflow to get that content in, always. So it's not the kind of individual asset by asset like traditional content management systems.
Got it. Yeah, and then there was a question I had around geo. So it's a term that's fairly new and it's out there, which is people starting to the traditional conversion rate optimization. It's kind of changing. There was also SEO. I'd optimized for SEO, and now I'm thinking about language models and generative optimization. And these people are now starting to turn their head to geo and making content that's more friendly for language models. In the social context, when you've got social content, what's your answer to that? How do you make social content that you have on site, that you're hosting on site, more relevant to language models that are out there trying to find the right content for the model?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a key area in the industry more broadly, and I guess much like the Google algorithm is a bit of a black box, and people aren't still 100% sure how LLMs actually all knit together and things. But I think broadly what you're saying is you are providing content that is well described in a English language primarily way, versus a metadata and labels, ways you can describe it like a human would, will help it to flow into searches and narrative actually that people are searching for. So we if you look at vector search and things like that as a search tool, if you can marry together generative AI described content like video and imagery, you can make those models work very well. So it's the same way that I might have 1,000 people in a room all with a piece of content writing down what's in this piece of paper, how would you describe it to a friend, and all those sorts of things in language, versus 3 bits of metadata that you've kind of tagged it with. That's how we're seeing kind of opportunity at the moment, is that you need to think about how you can add a whole layer of descriptive information onto all of the content on your site, and structure that in a way that makes it easy to find. But it's very, very early days, I think, is probably the answer.
And you've showed me previously a kind of a speech to text module that you have, say where it's looking at a video and it's extracting the conversation within the video.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can do so much with these things now in terms of adding a whole layers of beyond metadata that are much more descriptive and verbose. And when you start thinking about like site search or personalization and all these types of applications, you can do a lot more with it. That's what I think the LLM technology is starting to unlock. But now clearly it's the application around how it will work. So we actually have a new solution coming very soon called Social Storefront. Will actually be a fully immersive social-like experience, but layered on top of the whole site, taking all the product feed, all of our existing content, and then out layering social content. So you have this new way of basically engaging and discovering and being inspired with shopping, on a brand website.
Got it. And then I guess finally the question, forgetting language models for a second, the future of social shopping. Obviously, we've seen the rise of TikTok and social now shopping from inside TikTok, and the work they've been doing with Shopify, etc. What's your prediction on where this is going, and where will StoryStream remain relevant?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting space, very dynamic. I think ultimately there's going to have to be a move away from static template-based commerce experiences that have largely, been the norm for the last 20 years. And, when you've got homepage category, PLP, PDP, etc., you've got the world of social, which is the immersive, always on, endless discovery, but you've got access to the community to be inspired. Then you've got the move to agent-based assistance, the latest announcements from Google and their AI shopping, and Shopify with the MCP layer that they've got. It's all, I think, ultimately it's going to be really positive for consumers, and they'll start to get really good tailored experiences. I think where we play in that is providing some of the infrastructure and the access to content that makes these experiences come to life. Because essentially, you don't just want product pictures, you want the imagery and the video of people using it on the community side of it as well. You want that content tagged in a way that makes it relevant to LLMs to then discover and use and things. So, and our social media is not going to go away anytime soon either. So there's this huge role for brands to be able to still influence and engage on social platforms. And I think people will still increasingly be intrigued and inquisitive and want to go on social channels to find new products and things to buy, because the risk is with your AI shopping assistants that they start creating a bit of a filter bubble around you and only give you what because that's what you've engaged with in the past and things. Now, I'm sure the AI will be much more capable of that, but I think that there is a risk that everyone's very excited about where AI is moving to, but I think there is going to be an element where there's some humanization needed to make it feel useful again, versus talking to something faceless kind of thing.
Got it. And social traffic, just interested finally, social traffic has obviously increased over the years. What's the trajectory at the moment? Where
it's interesting. So what you're seeing is two things. Firstly, about anywhere between 5 to 15, 20%, depending on the industry, is directly attributable to social. But there's been quite a lot of research done on this concept of dark social, which means actually people come into your site that have been influenced originally from social channels, or maybe clicked a link that was shared in WhatsApp or something. Now that traffic is hidden in your direct traffic metrics, which you just don't know. And because of the drop-off rates we see from direct social traffic, it stands to reason that there's a bigger proportion of traffic that's still not well optimized for in terms of that middle of the funnel. And I think that's a big part of it. I just don't think e-commerce generally is good at middle of the funnel kind of engagement at the moment. You know, everyone's been talking about brand and inspiration and discovery for a long time, and I think that's essentially the gap we're talking about. And so if you can solve for that more, then you have the ability to make some quite profound impact on overall profitability and margins on your e-commerce. You know, if you're talking about getting conversion rates from 3.5 to 4, that makes a big difference on your revenue numbers, doesn't it? So I think that social traffic is the leading indicator, but it points more to a whole kind of behavioural shift in how we want to engage and shop online. That e-commerce traditionally is narrow at doing a very specific part of the buying funnel, which is broadly, I know what I want to buy, help me buy that thing, and maybe there's some other things around the edge that I'd consider.
Yeah, so it feels like the future's a bit more fluid and a bit more multi-attributed.
Yeah, it should be, knowing roughly, like, okay, I'm going on holiday. Here's just some ideas versus I want to buy a pair of flip flops, sort of thing, and know that that intent and that difference in what's going on there. But to be able to supply that experience, I think it's a different mode to I have to now send you to your category landing page because this is where you're at, or versus the flip flop page because that's what you want to buy. To something that's much more. Here's some ideas. Here's some other things that are in your size and your style and your preference, and here's also some other things you might not consider, but people like you also like, or whatever. So it feels like we're starting to finally see the opportunity to play out what's been talked about for so long around personalization and all these types of things.
Yeah, got it. Well, thank you very much. That's really interesting technology and very interesting future with social shopping. So people know where to find you. But yeah, thank you very much, Alex.
Great stuff. Thank you.